Sing on the intercom, Rosie tell me to come. Said she didn't have a daughter, she didn't have a son. She said the lift doesn't grow. Run up the stairs and come. And if you do not come quick, you're not gonna hold the sons. I bought a bunch of roses. I started to here I come. Whoa! Yes, the man. 2 months later, she said, "Come and get your son." This right now. I'm getting this notification that my Facebook accounts are disconnected. I don't remember the password, so y'all might not be able to even see the show. Might as well have some fun. Go to YouTube. I'm broad. I'm broader than Broadway. All right, Barrington, leave it after that. What's up, peoples? Welcome to the Even People Show. I have a cool show for y'all today, and I don't know what is going on. If y'all cannot see me on Facebook, let me know. Because I don't know my Facebook password is. Bear me a minute here and see if I can find it. And see if I can reconnect just so I don't miss my peoples. All right, so today we're going to talk about a show that, you know, those situations when they happen, you and somebody jokes about it and you say to them, nah, too soon, bro. Like too soon. Like it's too early. You can't be joking about that so soon. It's still a touchy situation, you know what I mean? And you can't really be joking about, oh, you know what? I think I know what I did today. Hang on. Bear with me here, peoples. I'm just trying to get everybody connected here. Today, I got a Facebook notice that somebody accessed my account. I don't know why they'd want to do that. Let me see if this works. Does it work? I don't know. If it doesn't work, then I've lost access to Facebook, but we're going to go live on YouTube still, right? And if none of these work, I'm done for the day. All right. So today we're going to talk about COVID, the marriage killer. Okay. Now, there are several permutations to this that we're going to get into. This thing is still not doing what I need it to do. So I'm just going to leave it. Reset password. That's what it's telling me, Wazim. And I don't know what my password is, and I don't have time to reset my password. So if Facebook is not live, I apologize. I'll share it when I share the YouTube show when I'm done. So welcome my YouTube peoples. I'm having 2 asterisks for the Facebook. So I'm very confused as to what's going on. All right, so check this. COVID, the marriage killer. Before we start, I realized that the last 2 shows that I had, I actually did not have, I actually did not read a poem. I did not read a poem at all on the last 2 shows. So today, I'm going to start the show off with reading a poem, just in case I forget to read a poem again. The poem that I'm going to read is a poem that I wrote many moons ago. Actually, I wrote this poem when the pandemic just started. I wrote it in 2020. It's called The New Revelation. And it was really like one of my guests said to me one time that if I had stayed inside my mom for about 2 more days, I'd have been a prophet because of some of the things I write. I don't know about all that, but this one kind of gives you some foresight as to what we're going to talk about, even though I wrote this in March of 2020 before any of this really got going, or when this was just getting going. Okay. Shernit and Wazim, check my Facebook as well. If you cannot see it on Facebook, share the link, make a post, do something on my behalf, because I'm actually live and I'm not going to stop. So the new revelation says, not the fire and brimstone perceived, nor the seven-headed dragon you never even believed, not the lake of fire or four horsemen, nor the mark of the beast or battle for Armageddon, but a revelation of a new kind, seen yet overlooked by most minds, unwilling to accept what doesn't look the way you think it should. No parables this time, yet it's misunderstood. Revelation, the act is which something in reveal or disclose. This thing you try to avoid, yet it shows. Coming to terms with the reality of a situation, a rude awakening that brings you unwanted clarification. Quarantined with a family you don't really know, learning new things about them as each day goes. Children you wished were back in school, significant others you realize are not that cool. If your last month's self ever caught you wishing you were back at work, using your phones to escape, using your phones as an escape to avoid the truth, realizing your social media platform self is not who you really are, burning through your savings like gas in a race car. The new revelation that simply reveals you to your true self, whether or not you're pleased. The question is, who will you be when it all ends? Knowing how quickly things can change, will you be your true self? What will the revelation reveal to you on the other side? What will you prioritize when your eyes are open wide? Will you continue to pretend, or will you concede? The above money or social media friends. Wait a minute. Let's read that again. What will the revelation reveal to you on the other side? What will you prioritize when your eyes are open wide? Will you continue to pretend, or will you concede? That above money or social media friends, real connection is what you need. And please, don't deceive yourself that you are exempt. I didn't touch your specific situation, but you know the hand you're dealt. Don't be selfish either. This is really not about you. It's the new revelation, and its words are true. I wrote this, I call these the quarantine monologues. I have a bunch of them. And I wrote this one in 3:30 of 2020. Denton Atkins, bless up yourself, my youth. Bless up yourself. Wazim Lindsay in the place. Shirley Tiggin is the place. Vimbai Mudimu is in the place. And I still keep getting these messages that I'm not live on either of my Facebook pages, and I don't remember my password. So YouTube people, stay tuned. All right, so check this out. So we're going to talk about a couple things here. Some statistics I'm going to throw at you real quick. In early 2020 or mid-pandemic, application for divorces rose in the UK by 122% the first couple of months in the pandemic. Here in the US, we have websites that you can actually file your divorce on, or you can get the divorce papers that you need, and those numbers increase quite significantly as well. In those first couple of months, increase of over 34%, with 20% of that 34% coming from newlyweds, people that were married for 5 months or less. Okay, so let's broad stroke this for a little bit before we really get into it. The pandemic and the lockdown, the quarantine, and everything that came with that affected many of our core relationships. By core relationships, I'm talking about relationships or some of the changes includes being homeschooled, children being homeschooled. So it changed the dynamic between the parent and the child. Extended families now being in your home because of people losing their jobs, no longer being able to sustain themselves. Kids that are probably moved out of the home, moving back into the home because they can no longer sustain themselves. We have the concept of the great resignation, which I'm going to do a show on as well. The great resignation is a concept they came about with so many people leaving their jobs and now being at home. Your church dynamic change. People use church as a for many things, including a crutch for an escape or some kind of reset, recharge outlet, and that was taken away for quite a while. And you have what we like to call side relationships. In other countries, they call them a second house or a second yard. All those things were gone now because you were quarantined. Movement was very limited. So let's get into it. Before I go any further, there's something I want to point out too, that COVID is not, I wouldn't say, the cause of a lot of these things. It is more of an effect. Okay. So COVID is not really the cause of a lot of these things. COVID is what I would say, and what we're going to look at is more like an effect versus a cause. Okay. So COVID-19 breakup boom. Let's discuss that for a second. Now, the lockdown and social distancing presented what sociologists call the perfect storm for some relationships. The perfect storm in the sense that it constituted a catalyst for relationships that were already on the rocks and that were using routine and work schedules to mask their real issues. Okay. So what the quarantine, what one of the COVID byproducts the quarantine presented was a catalyst. So it's not that it created problems per se in some of the instances. Others we look at here in a minute. It's not that it created the problems in some instances. It's just that it highlighted the problems that were already there. So what was happening is you already were on shaky ground in your relationship, but because of the routines you guys have, because of the fact that you were not really spending any significant amount of time with your significant other or really with your kids in a lot of instances, you were able to mask the fact that you actually had a problem, right? You were able to disguise it. You were able to sidestep it. You were able to deal with it in small doses. And because of that, you were able to carry on as if you really did not have a problem worthy of terminating your marriage or your stable relationship. But because you had a break ever so often, every day, even where you would leave the house, and on weekends, you still had routines that you did that essentially helped you to avoid each other, right? And because of that, you were able to sustain a relationship that really was on its last legs anyways. Okay. Now, what I found out as well is that typically after any period of lockdown, Christmas holidays, summer holidays, any holidays, apparently those are actually times that we usually have an increase in divorce regardless. So forgive me. So having the issue of divorce numbers spiking after a lockdown or after anything related to a lockdown is actually not a novel concept. This is something that has been this way for a while. It's just that, like I said, it would be short lived. We could be able to reset and continue like nothing was really happening. But now that the quarantine came and it had us locked down for the period of time that it's had us locked down, then everything that was there simmering just was allowed to boil over. Okay. Now, what happened immediately following the first set of lockdowns in places like Britain and the US is that women were the ones that were filing for divorce 76% more than men. Now, this is uncommon. Usually, the divorce rate is more 50-50. Okay. But post lockdown, women were the ones that were leading the charge, filing, that were doing the actual filing for the divorce. Now, some of the theories that were put out there as to why this was the case is that household and childcare, like the household chores and childcare, were still falling predominantly on the woman. So, your husband got the opportunity to work from home. You, the woman, think, okay, yes, now I'm going to have more help with the kids. Now I'm going to have more help doing the housework. I'm going to have more help in general because my husband, who's usually at work, is now at home. That actually did not materialize. Um, and because of that, and the stresses associated with that, we found that during the early stages of the quarantine, um, the number of women that filed for divorce significantly spiked over what the numbers usually look like. Let's see what Mr. Wazim is saying. Wazim is saying, for some reason, I thought COVID would or should be a marriage enhancer. Couples get to spend a lot of time together. Um, that's if they have a good marriage. Why wife and husband can't stand too much of each other? Does that show up some already vulnerabilities? Yeah, in some instances, Wazim, in some instances, that's exactly what happened. In some instances, it brought to the surface something that they were sidestepping. You see what I'm saying? Because when they were going to work every day, they had a routine. Okay, I say this often. Well, not often, but when I'm asked what happened with my marriage with my daughter's mom, I often say it was perishable. It didn't travel very well. So when we left from New York and traveled to Florida, the marriage, it was like fruits. It didn't travel very well. You know what I mean? So because of that, it didn't last. A lot of relationships are like that, not perishable per se, but the conditions under which they originated and the conditions under which they exist from day to day are has the characteristics that keep them together. And if that dynamic changes, then all of a sudden the relationship cannot stand by itself. Some relationships are built differently and they can withstand a lot more. Some relationships are built in such a way that they cannot withstand certain changes. Okay. So it's not, so in the instance that we're referencing now, it's a case where these persons, they already had issues, and these would have been some of the first set of people to start seeing the signs, the writing on the wall, so to speak. They already had issues. It's just that because of the routines they had, the issues were being disguised. When the quarantine started and they no longer had the alternative to sidestep the issue and had to face the issue, then they realized that they'd just rather not deal with the issue at all. And so the divorce numbers started spiking. Now, let me see what Shernet is saying. Shernet is saying growing apart could have been a cause. They were spending more time as a result of COVID. You realize that you no longer have the same likes, or you might not have anything in common. And yes, this is what was, because when you think about it. The average 9 to 5 working couple, okay, whether they're business owners or they're just line associates in a company, they work quite a bit of hours. Okay, so you come home, if you guys happen to have the same schedule. Agree with me 100%. Bless up yourself, Simone Archer. Welcome. Um, the they really don't spend a lot of time with each other. You know what I mean? If somebody, especially if one of them work long hours from Monday to Friday, you come home and the other person is closing down for the night. You see them for 2 hours before you go to sleep. They come to bed at some point. One person, if they wake up early and get up and gone. So from Monday to Friday, you actually spend 10 hours with your significant other, give or take, when you usually are talking about the kids or the regular 9 to 5 everyday things. On the weekend is when you have time to do a whole bunch of running around. And then by a Sunday, you might have some time to get on a Sunday, and boom, it's Monday again and you start over. So you really don't have a lot of time. So issues in relationships can be allowed to fester for a long, 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 long time and just You just sidestep it for years and years. The second thing I want to talk about is the never ending argument. And it's not that you're consistently arguing, it's just that you're quarantined together. You have one misunderstanding, you have a argument per se. It's not exactly resolved, but now you don't have to go play ball option. You don't have to go to the gym option. You are locked down. You're locked in. So now you're cold shouldering each other in confined spaces, and that now just evolve into and take on a life of its own and become something else altogether. No alternative outlet being there, and it just sets the tone for the rest of the lockdown. And if you guys cannot communicate, by the time the lockdown is over, y'all already over each other. You know what I mean? And it's not that the issue was that big per se. It's just that the way you would usually deal with something has you don't have that option available to you anymore. So this relationship might not necessarily be one of the ones that was already, kind of on the rocks. It's really one of them that really had a chance. However, because the setting had changed and it just intensified the situation, you just never had the outlets you usually have. Now, another thing that I want us to talk about real quick is increased mental issues as one of the reasons. Increased mental issues. Now, that became associated with the pandemic as it dragged on. And they came from a lot of different areas. For example, say you have one person that out of the group of you. And before I even say that, let's look at it. Everybody's lockdown was different. So what I want y'all to understand is that for some folks, they were lockdown. You understand? So when, say one of them already worked from home, the second one was going to work every day. The second one now had the option to work from home. So both of them are working from home. You had some people that from that lockdown started, they did not go anywhere. Because if you're here anywhere in the US, or in several other countries, you have the option to grocery shop online and have the grocery delivered to your door. And when you're sitting at home, just watching the numbers, watching all the things that were being said at the time, you got to remember now, 2020 was crazy. There was all kinds of stuff going on about it. And a lot of people were genuinely afraid. Now, let's say one of those people is OCD, which is already a mental issue. And then one person catches COVID out of the two of them and they're quarantined. And the OCD person now is in a state of absolute panic. Okay. Worst of all, if it's a germ OCD they have, where it's one of those people that just over clean or wipes everything. And now you have COVID in the house that they're in. You have or it's somebody with an anxiety disorder. And now they have been sitting there watching all these things about COVID all this time. They're afraid of COVID. And you catch COVID in the space that they're in, and you're both quarantined together. And this could have been a fully functional, happy relationship. But once that dynamic change and one person catches it, it's like going from 0 to 100. So it just caused that one person with the OCD or that already had the anxiety disorder to just be stressed out, like on 10 stressed out, right? And the relationship would have come under increasing amount of stress just from that alone. You know what I mean? You could have another situation where one person has caught COVID and the other person now has to deal with the babies or the baby, and this is not the person that usually deals with the baby. So now for 2 weeks, or God forbid, the person had long COVID and they were out with for months, and now that the other person now had to juggle working from home, dealing with the baby when they're not the one that usually deal with the baby. And anybody that has ever dealt with a baby that is crying or teething or something, and if daddy isn't usually the one to deal with the baby, and now daddy has to be filling in because mommy has COVID, daddy has a problem. And that right there, ongoing days can stress anybody out. If you're not the one that used to deal with the homeschooling of the kids. And now because the other person has COVID, or now you have to deal with homeschooling in general, or just like I said, just being afraid of catching it, or the lack of physical contact that there is during the time that you guys had to quarantine from each other. Or, God forbid, the question comes up as to how you caught it in the first place, because you should never have been anywhere that you should have caught it. Or I'm just taking it as you were just irresponsible and not caring about my condition that I have, that I can't pass, that I'm at high risk, and how could you dare catch COVID and bring it into the house and all that. All stressful situations, all of which have been cited as reasons that have literally led to people filing for divorce, because they really just could not. They just could not deal with the person anymore, because they didn't find a way to figure this thing out. Right now, we mentioned loss of routines before, loss of routines that offer stability, an outlet and comfort, and kind of give you a rhythm for your relationship. Let's see what Miss Wimba is saying. Even differences in one household about adopting precautions created stress. For example, differences in opinion about social distancing, mask wearing, and vaccines. Yes, absolutely, 100%. You can have people in the same household that have significantly different takes on how to deal with COVID. Who should I have to get the vaccine? Should I not get the vaccine? Same situation like I mentioned. One get the vaccine, and then the unvaccinated one catches the virus, and now it becomes a source of friction, because I told you to take the vaccine. You and I were in the same place. You have it, I don't have it. If you had taken the vaccine, we wouldn't be here now. And remember, a lot of these situations also can have resulted in loss of life from the virus itself, where now in some of these instances, some really sad stories and some really devastating situations were the outcome. So it's not just man-woman type argument or disagreement. Some of these things actually ended very sadly, because someone actually lost a life. Someone went out and caught it, and God forbid one of the kids got it, and they lost a life. Or grandma that lives with us catch it, and grandma doesn't go anywhere, so one of us brought it in. You understand? And it's my parent that live with us, but you went out, caught COVID, and my parent catch it from you, and all of us, and now we mash up. Because initially we were arguing about the vaccine. I took it, you didn't. Now you catch it. Now my mother dead from you catching it and bringing it home with you. And all these things kind of just created a melting pot of issues. And on the back end of it, a lot of people that were, for lack of a better, from all appearances, happily married in February of 2020, by July and August, September of 2020, this was no more. And a lot of the things that caused were byproducts of COVID, were byproducts of being quarantined, that led them down that path. All right. So we're talking about loss of the routine and the stability that it offers, the comfort and a rhythm that relationships tend to have. Example, like I mentioned, Saturday morning football. You know what I mean? Girls' night out and all these things. Girls' night out, Saturday morning football, going to church on a Sunday. Just hanging out with the boys, just the little things that you used to do that allowed you to sidestep issues, or allowed you to clear your head, so to speak, in some instances, was just not there. Now, what that resulted in is a lot of people feeling trapped in the situation, as if they had no way out. And I'm going to break it down really simple. It could be something simple as an introvert living with an extrovert. Simple. No complex, nothing. The people who had a solid relationship, but it was an introvert living with an extrovert. The extrovert usually has the opportunity to go out and is a social butterfly. So they had the opportunity to go out and mix and mingle with everybody and be happy and be their extroverted self. The introvert was happy to deal with the extrovert short term when they come home after going out there and social butterflying, right? But now we're quarantined together. I want more social interaction, being the extrovert. You want to be left alone, being the introvert, and it creates friction between us. We got locked down long enough to where by the time we came out the other end, we no longer wanted to be together because the extrovert was there going absolutely mad and probably started projecting parts of the, started acting out, so to speak. And by the time they were done, the introvert was over it. Or the extrovert is like, I can't live with somebody like this that just want to be by themselves half the time and think. But because the going out and coming in that was available is no longer available, and you just had to be locked down with a person, then now you realize that, even though you guys had a good relationship, the routines, the processes, the outlets, the rhythm that the relationship had, and the things you used to do that facilitated that rhythm, the absence of them now resulted in just too much stress for either you to handle, and ultimately ended in divorce. Vimba is saying so true. I know a real example of that situation. Yes, being quarantined with somebody that's total opposite personality of you, and it's simple. Let me tell you now, it's not complex at all. I have a sister. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I have a sister. I love her to death, but we good around each other for like 48 hours. 48 hours, we can be in the same, we can go home and be in the same place for 48 hours. After 48 hours, one of us needs to go. We'll get along after we need a break from each other after 48 hours. It's my sister and I love her to death, and I'm sure that she loves me. But after 48 hours, we need a break from each other. Now, picture us being somewhere and have to quarantine together for 2 weeks. No, sir. It wouldn't be pretty. And like I said, it's not even a friend or a spouse or something. This is my biological sister that I love. And 48 hours is all we're good for around each other now because of just the difference in our personalities and just the differences in our personalities alone. You know what I mean? But I can spend a lot of time around her if I can, if it's, just seeing her in the evening, me gone in the morning, she's gone in the morning, we can do whatever, right? And really, some of these relationships end up being the same way. Now, we can't mention it, things that cause divorce without mentioning money. And that's the song I was gonna play to start the show. This one of my sisters said, "Ooh, not you, the other one, not you, big sis, the other one, the other one. Don't tell her I said so." Um, so you and I can stay together forever. The other one, not so much. Anyways, money becomes an issue. I knew one of them was on here. Money can become an issue because what happened a lot in the quarantine is that a lot of people lost their jobs. We had a lot of closures. We had a lot of people being furloughed. Um, we had a lot of people's hours being cut, and then you now this brings into focus how much money do we actually have. It's like the poem said, is your social media life your real life? What I mean, how much savings are you sitting on? How long can you sustain yourself without getting up and going to work every day? And now that our money is limited, who determines how the money gets spent? What if one of us is still working but the other one is not? Okay, how does the money spending go now? You know what I mean? Our lifestyle now has to change. So that the things that maybe we have to downsize from 2 cars to 1 car. Maybe we have to downsize if the children have car, we have to downsize their cars. So now everybody's lifestyle is now changed because the income gets different. Now, if it's the situation where the man loses a job and the woman is still working, then now you might have some blows to the self-esteem now becoming an issue, and that will lead now to anger, to anxiety, to frustration, and in some cases led to domestic violence because you felt emasculated because you now have to depend on your wife to take care of you because you're not working, not of anything that you did, not because you are a worthless person, so to speak. You were a hardworking person. It's just that, for example, your company closed because of the nature of the job that you had. Um, and now you're placed in a situation where you feel emasculated, you're home, you're locked down, you don't have any of the usual outlets you usually have, you don't have money in your pocket to go down a road, go buy yourself a beer or a chill or whatever, and now you just imploded. You start taking it out on the wife, you start taking it out on the kids. We have a bad situation on our hands. And again, like we said, the statistics post quarantine is that a lot of women were the ones actually filing for the divorce because of the situations that existed during for them and how they were affected. Now we must understand too that entire industries were disproportionately affected by the quarantine, because you have the hospitality industries, leisure industries, retail, tourism, and women and young people and minorities, depending on the country that you're in, are the people that are predominantly in these areas. So they were disproportionately negatively affected, and and in some instances, this is why a lot of those relationships, those younger relationships, we saw a spike, especially in divorces in younger relationships, younger marriages from younger people who the quarantine COVID lockdown was in some instances the first real test of the relationship, the first real test of the marriage. It was the first real issue that they had to work through. Up until that time, it was, bells and whistles and happy go lucky. Somebody still embellishing in the fact that there are now Mrs. So and so, or a man is now embellishing that he now have Mrs. So and so beside him, and now they actually have some real issues, and they're having conversations that they probably coulda, woulda, shoulda had before, but didn't, and now the thing is being thrust upon them, and they're realizing that they're not really prepared for it, or they're simply not communicating effectively through it, and as a result of that, they have a bad situation on the back end. Simone Archer is saying the women file for divorce because they want to move on. Men don't seem very interested in filing for divorce. Um, why do you think that is? And some men are, but yeah, predominantly women are the one that move on. It takes a certain kind of man to actually file for divorce. A lot of men would rather stay there and go outside the relationship and do all kind of things, but they won't actually file for divorce. I know a lot of men like that. That they would never break up with a woman. The woman have to break up with them. It's like I don't understand the logic, but it is what it is. Another thing I want to point out real quick is that the fact that minorities were significantly affected or disproportionately affected kind of led to a lot of the mental issues that they were having, and the fact that they're the same group of people who are not keen on therapy, that kind of also helped to lead to some of this divorce statistics, because when they could have gone and seen a professional and potentially work through the issue, they didn't. So they either didn't say anything and allowed the relationship to implode, or they didn't take the help that was available to them at all, and allow the relationships to fall apart. Now note, it was hypothesized in 2020 earlier on that when the vaccine, let me see what these ladies are saying. They be saying because the men will just go on and sit a side chick. Oh yeah, okay, Miss Vimba, you know some about side chicks. You gotta tell me about that. They were hypothesizing that once the vaccine came on, then the boom would stop. The divorce boom would stop. But it actually, when the vaccines did come on board, it turned out that that was actually not the case, because what came to light is that even more people would have filed for divorce, but they were afraid of being alone during the pandemic. And because they were not working regular hours, or were downsized, or were furloughed, they pretty much stayed out of necessity. And then once the vaccines came in and the world kind of opened up and they were working, then we even saw the numbers spike again because now I can sustain myself again. Now I can do what I need to do, and now I'm out. On the other hand, you did have some instances where people started realizing, you know what, life is short, life is too short. They lost loved ones, they lost people during pandemic, and they realize, you know what, it doesn't even make sense to fool around. I mean, if I'm with this person, I'm with this person, and I'm gonna work it out. I'm gonna do what I need to do. And you saw a lot of people were actually getting back together, or more importantly, some people actually took the time to be more selective in who they decided to spend their time or their lives with, because they realized that how precious the preciousness of life kind of came into very sharp view during 2020, because we were losing so much of them unexpectedly. So it makes you kind of step back and realize, hey, um, who do I want to spend the rest of my life with? Who do I want to spend my time with at all? And if it's not the person that I am with, then I probably need to change something and figure out who I actually want to be spending my time with. All right. So, like we said, we're talking about quarantine, the marriage killer. The facts, the numbers speak for themselves. A lot of people really did get divorced during 2020. I guess you realize I'm not even talking about 2021 yet. I'm letting 2022 go a little bit. Then I have another show. I'll probably have a few guests on for that one. We talk about 2021 and how the predictions for 2021, what came true and what didn't. But a few takeaways here is the time old saying of taking time to know her or taking time to know him. Take time to know the person that you're actually with. And I'm not talking about because here's the thing. I believe a lot of times we see what is, we see the mirage, but we see what is behind the mirage, and we allow ourselves to believe the mirage because that's what we want to believe. Take time to know the person. Ask the questions you need to ask. Do your due diligence in the things you need to do your due diligence in, and make sure that is a person that, yeah, if on a quarantine together, is just let the good times roll. Identify when you are, let me not even get to that one, but let me touch it. Identify when you are acting emotionally or when you are emotionally stuck, and learn how to communicate. So a lot of times, like I said, we are in situations. I had a show about this the other day, being emotionally stuck, right? I had a show last week about tripping and identifying when you're tripping, and the fact that some people go their entire lives tripping to the part that to the point where them tripping has become a characteristic that people reference when referencing them. Like I think the example I gave was that person that's always miserable. That's because they're always tripping, because they're insecure and them feels that people are looking upon them. Everywhere they go, they think somebody's looking at them. When nobody's looking at them or nobody's thinking negative toward them, but they, because of their insecurity, think that. So they always have a screw face. They're tripping. They're holding on to an illusion that's not true and acting upon it, right? We need to be able to identify that within ourselves and make sure we're not projecting that into our relationships and now making an issue for us as a bad situation out of a situation that a little communication can fix. Which leads me to the next point, which is communicate. Learn how to communicate with the person you're with. If it's somebody that you're actually planning to spend time with and you can't sit down and talk, it not gonna work. Because when you have, if you can't talk when you're happy, you definitely can't talk when you're vexed with one another, right? So it has to be somebody that you're able to talk to. Be real and honest with your partner. Be real and honest with your partner, especially in the early stages. Take time to say the things that need to be said. Have the difficult conversations, because here's the thing. If you pretty up something right now that you're going to have to deal with down the line, please don't get married to them before you deal with it. Because when it comes up, it might cause the relationship to end. And you see, if you bring it up initially and it's something that they can't deal with, then guess what? You dodge the bullet, right? But if you actually bring it up and y'all work through it, guess what? Y'all are working on problem solving together, so that when you get together, you can actually solve complex things together, right? Ask for help is the last nugget I'm going to leave with you. Ask for help. If you find yourself in a bad situation, ask for help, people. Nobody has everything figured out. I've talked to old couples a lot. My parents are an old couple. They had like 50 years last month, right? They've been together for a long time. They've been through a lot of things. You can talk to them. I know a lot of other couples that have been together from as long as I know myself till now, and I'm enough years old now, right? Talk to them. Talk to a professional if it gets to that point. But don't sit and think that it's just going to work out. It's just going to fix itself. He's going to come around. She's going to come around. In my experience, that's not how that usually works out. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need help, seek help. The numbers speak for themselves, people. We're talking about quarantine, the marriage killer. And like we said, the quarantine was not the reason. It was more a byproduct. All right. I'm gonna wrap up with that. I'm gonna go figure out why my Facebook ain't working. And that's all I have for y'all tonight. Thanks for joining me. If y'all join late, see if I can restream on Facebook for the ones that miss it on Facebook. But like I said, YouTube is there. It's live and in living colors. And I read a poem earlier, so if you miss it, go back and check it out. But from me and the crew here at the Evening People Show, we out, man.